Well, hello there. This is the fourth video in the Unpacking the Birth Chart series. It's called Where Are You Going? And we're going to talk about the lunar north and south nodes. I am Seth Roback. Go through here. I go into more explanation in another video, my Astrology 201, Saturn Returns in the Lunar North and the lunar nodes. That's in my beginning astrology curriculum series. So I'll go describe them briefly here, but if you want to get more in-depth explanation, please check out that video. Anyways, the lunar nodes are the intersection between the ecliptic, which is the path of, well, what people used to think was the path of the sun. Really, it's the path of the Earth around the sun, and the path of the lunar orbit around the Earth. So where these points intersect are the lunar north and south nodes. And so it has to do with the lunar, where the moon intersects, and the moon, I'll just put an arrow showing kind of the direction it's traveling. So it's going into the lunar south node where it dips below the ecliptic. Where it goes above the ecliptic is the lunar north node. That's why the north node loops up and the south node loops down, as if the south were down from us. Anyways, that kind of describes a little bit how it works. So the lunar, so when we look at the lunar north and south nodes, you know, each of these is in a sign and house. Like, let's say the lunar north node here is in Aries, then on the opposite side of the zodiac, where the south node would be Libra. And if the lunar node were in the, let's say it was in the 6th house in Aries, the lunar south node would be in the opposite, which would be the 12th house. You know, something like that, just to give you an example. So we will look through all the different sign placements and house placements briefly and just kind of describe what each one means. Another thing we will do is look at the planetary conjuncts. Just be aware that the nodes move backwards through the zodiac because this point, the intersection points, move the opposite direction as the moon. The moon moves this way. The sun appears to move this way, while these lunar north and south nodes move the opposite direction. That intersection point, whatever. So that's why it appears to move, why it moves backwards through all the signs in the zodiac. It takes about 1.5 years to go through each sign, or to move through a sign, and then about 18 years to do a complete return. So if we were to look at the lunar nodes as the source and destination address, on those using the package analogy we've used for this series, the north node represents the destination and represents our life lessons that we're to learn. And the south node is where we're coming from, which could be past life karma or past family generational mindsets that have been passed down that you're evolving from. So let's talk about lunar nodes and the Saturn return. There are 2 Saturn returns in a lifetime, every 28 or so years. Before our first return, we're definitely dominated by the by the lunar south node, the mindset of the lunar south node, before the first Saturn return. So before age 28, that's kind of how our mindset is. And then over time, we evolve after the first Saturn return. We start to develop our lunar north node mindset. So between the first and second Saturn return, first return being around age 28 and the second around age 56, we're developing our north node mindset. And then after our second return, we can reflect on, those kind of lessons that we've learned and definitely developing that. I mean, even when we're older, we're still stuck in our past mindset. So this is just kind of a theoretical model. In reality, in real life, we're really a mixture of both our south and north node mindsets. The north node, like the Saturn return, represents maturity, what we've matured into, versus when we feel immature, when we feel stuck, like we're regressing or like we're, we haven't aged, we're still thinking like we did as a teenager, or, when you look at someone and they seem like they're kind of, not immature, not maturing, that's usually them acting out their south node mindset. And when someone feels like they've become wise, it's that they've kind of grown into that north node mindset. And the Saturn is the timekeeper, for that transition. But it's very funny how we'll see people, it doesn't matter what age they are, they appear childish. It's usually acting out that south node mindset. Just something I've noticed. So let's go through each of the different north node, south node combinations. We'll just briefly go through them. Again, watch my Astrology 201 video. I explain them a little bit more, but I'll just kind of go through all 12 south node, north nodes combinations here, just to kind of refresh your awareness of them. And of course, these are just my kind of, these can be interpreted an infinite number of ways. This is just sort of, as you get more intimate with the different houses, what they mean, and the astrology zodiac signs, and you do your own charts, you'll start to make your own associations with what these particular node placements mean. So looking at the 6th house Virgo south node that transitions into the 12th house Pisces north node. Oh, so let me back up here a second. In each of these examples, I mention a house and I mention a sign. So most likely, unless you have an Aries ascendant in which the house is the same as the sign, I just use the house, because each sign is associated with the house, characteristics of the house. The house are the physical characteristics, or the more concrete characteristics of the sign, whereas the sign is more abstract characteristics. So when I say 6th house Virgo south node, it means your south node could either be in the 6th house or it could be in Virgo. It could be in Virgo in another house. It could be Virgo in the 7th house. So you'll look at this particular slide as the south node Virgo, and then when we get to the 7th house south node, that will apply as well, if that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense. So you mix and match, because most likely the signs are going to be in a different house. So, two of these will apply to you, 2 of these slides as we go through them. One will apply that applies to the house placement. The other one will apply to the sign placement. Anyway, so if you have your south node in the 6th house or Virgo, and it transitions into the north node in the 12th house or Pisces. There's a general movement here of going within. You know, the 12th house is about spiritual introspection, so that's what you're moving towards. Your south node, either in the 6th house or Virgo, has to do with focusing on details, troubleshooting, left brain thinking. So that those are qualities and characteristics you have developed. You may even be a little slightly leaning in the OCD spectrum, obsessed with details, obsessed with that sort of thing. Everything having a kind of perfectionistic mindset. Where you're moving towards in your north node is kind of introspection, right brain thinking, letting go of details, looking at the big picture sort of mindset. So that's what you're learning to do. Moving backwards through the zodiac and houses, if you have a 5th house or Leo south node, or an 11th house or Aquarius north node, you're learning to innovate. Your south node shows being in Leo has to do with ego, being center of attention, being performance-minded, self-expression. So you may require a certain level of flattery. Now I have this. I have my Leo south node and my Aquarius north node. It's in a different house. It's in the 9th house. So this slide applies to my sign, this movement from being ego-centered to the north node, which is an Aquarius, which has to do with community, friendships, but also out-of-the-box sort of thinking and being innovative. So not taking myself so seriously as the Leo does, you know, and that I have to learn how to, you know, number one, have a sense of humor about myself, but also how to work with others. You know, Leo has to be the center, has to be the most important, has to, you know, command everyone's attention. Aquarius can kind of just work with others, but still maintain identity and individuality. So looking at the next one here, looking at the 4th house or Cancer south node that transitions into the 10th house or Capricorn north node, there's a need to become career oriented. Well, particularly if it's moving from the 4th house to the 10th house. You know, you could have a Libra ascendant in which the signs are in the opposite house. So the person may not become career oriented, but still, you know, if you go towards a Capricorn north node, as being someone who's disciplined, organized, can hold, what is it, delay gratification, control emotions, control basically in general. So that's what this person's learning how to do, is to be more in control, calm, cool, and collected. Now the south node is hiding out at home, so being home and family oriented, being kind of sheltered, maybe even fearful. And the north node is about going out there and achieving things, you know, achieving status, achieving prestige, that sort of stuff. So now we're looking at the 3rd house or Gemini in the south node transitioning into the 9th house or Sagittarius north node. So in this case, you're kind of finding yourself, you're finding your destiny. It's a search for truth, you know, because that's what Sagittarius in the 9th house is about. The south node has to do in Gemini or in the 3rd house is about information and communication. So perhaps this person is into ideas, but the north node is a search for truth, so it's finding meaning behind ideas, you know, not just ideas. So searching for truth through wisdom, through cultural institutions, through travel, looking for meaning. You know, when this person's in their south node, they can tend to focus on trivial things and just try to amuse themselves. Whereas in their north node, they're actually going on a journey, actually searching for something that has meaning beyond trivia. So a south node in the second house or Taurus transitioning to an eighth house or Scorpio north node. That's where you learn to tame your survival and sexual instincts. The south node is about possessions. Taurus is the sign of wealth and possessions, as well as the second house. So also being trapped in the senses, whereas the eighth house in Scorpio is about transformation, power, and letting go. You know, also shared wealth, or being resourceful with what you have instead of trying to accumulate more and more. The first house, Aries south node, in this transitions into the seventh house or Libra north node. This is where this person is learning how to sustain balanced relationships. So in the south node, they have a competitive mindset, whereas in the north node, they're in more of a sharing mindset and more of a relationship, give and take instead of domination. The 12th house or Piscean south node, before when we started the set of slides, the 12th house was the north node, 12th house or Pisces. Here it's the south node, transitioning into the 6th house or Virgo north node. So in this case, this is a kind of person, they need to learn how to deal with the here and now and the situations at hand. This is someone who might feel trapped in their subconscious, feeling very sensitive, losing hope, that sort of thing. But in their north node, they learn to solve problems and to learn how to make their bed and how to take each situation, each day, one step at a time. Learning healthy routines, learning just simple things they can do to make life better. Learn how to heal problems, focus on health, exercise, eating well, sleeping good hours, that sort of thing. And then they don't feel such overwhelming existential crisis. So here, the 11th house or Aquarius south node transitions into the 5th house or Leo north node. And the key word here is to create, but also to take ownership of your creations as well. The south node is the south node in this case very often is kind of, disappointed in other people, friendships, whatever. And what they're learning to do in their north node is how to empower themselves, not be dependent so much on their social circles or for people to accept them, who are around them, but to learn how to go for it for themselves, to express themselves, to believe in themselves and not need other people to accept them so much, people pleasing, or even feeling, that they can't connect with other people. I don't know. There's different ways you could look at this. But what they're going towards is a creative identity. So in this case, we have the 10th house or Capricorn south node that transitions into the 4th house or Cancer north node. They are learning to bond with family and to develop emotional security. So in this case, they perhaps are seeking status and wealth in their south node, but what they're learning to do is to develop a personal life that is rich with intimacy, having closeness, which I associate with Cancer. of wanting that kind of emotional security rather than, a conquest type of mindset. So here the ninth house Sagittarius South Node is transitioning into a third house or Gemini North Node, has to do with sharing your wisdom. Um, the South Node is seeking truth and introspection, and maybe even becoming to some degree a guru or whatever that's off in the mountain. The North Node is teaching and communicating. Gemini is about communication, but also becoming more open-minded, more flexible-minded, more tolerant, less dogmatic about your own views. I have this one. I have it with the houses. My ninth house is my South Node. My third house is my North Node, and I definitely have to learn how to listen to and communicate with people who share different points of view. That's important. Also, being able to make these videos is part of my Gemini North Node, to share teachings and wisdom, that sort of thing, but also to be open-minded to other people's ideas. So the eighth house or Scorpio South Node transitions into the second house or Taurus North Node. This is the placement where you learn to cultivate wealth and consistency. So your South Node in the eighth house is kind of struggling. You're constantly transforming. You're in crisis. Maybe thinking a little bit along the lines of a pauper or a tramp, depending on other people, that sort of thing. And what your North Node is telling you to do is to develop stability, consistency, and simplicity, and basically to grow your own garden, to maybe stay in one place and develop your enterprise, your business, grow your crops, whatever it is that you do. And as opposed to looking over into your neighbor's yard or into their fence and seeing what they have, you can look at what you can do and what you have. Okay, the seventh house or Libra South Node transitioning into the first house or Aries North Node. That's becoming one's own person. So you're moving away from the realm of relationship and learning to focus on your own self-determination. So it's moving away from heartbreak and disappointment in others and becoming and learning how to compete in the world, learning how to be a champion, learning how to go after what you want. So that kind of thing. So let's talk about planetary conjuncts. We just went briefly through all the different placements, house and sign, that the nodes occupy. So planetary conjuncts are planets that will conjunct the north or south node. And I think a good analogy for this is to look at the lunar nodes like a train locomotive. The north node shows where you're moving towards, and the south node is where you're moving from, right? So the north node, so planets that are going to conjunct your north node are going to add fuel to the fire to speed up the locomotive, whereas the south node conjuncts, or planets conjuncting the south node, will add brakes to the locomotive and slow it down. So so how do you interpret this? People with north node, with planets conjunct the north node, are accelerated. Their purpose in life is to develop their north node, whereas those that have planets conjunct the south node are not supposed to mature right away. It's I find that interesting with me having a Aquarius North Node and I have my Mars in Aquarius, and that Mars moves me towards my north node. Another thing I wanted to talk about is you want to look at the house ruled by the conjuncting planets. Well, my Mars rules the 5th house of children. So having children propelled me towards my north node. I have friends who are Leos, meaning their sun's in Leo, and that are, you know, born around the same year as me, or you know, within a month of me. And so their sun is conjunct their south node, which means that, you know, they are supposed to kind of hang back and be more of the center of attention, be more into their self-expression. I have a friend who, you know, won a lot of artistic scholarships and does bands, and, you know, whereas I tried certain things in performance and music, and, you know, it didn't seem to feel natural. You know, I instead went towards technology and that sort of thing, which is more Aquarian and getting more into astrology. Not that Leos can't be into astrology, but, you know, I went a little bit away from being self-expressive to being involved in communities and that sort of thing. And, you know, it was like it was his destiny to be still doing the kind of self-expressive type of careers, you know, being an artist and that sort of thing, that it fit him. So it's a natural thing. It's not that the planets conjunct your south node are not as advanced, make you less advanced than the planets conjunct your north node. It just means that it's kind of postponing your maturity into your north node, sort of thing, those particular planets. So I want to look here at another example of Buckminster Fuller, who is an inventor, ecologist, futurist, visionary. He invented the biofuel car, the tetrahedron, those dome structures. You know, he was kind of a visionary. And when you look at his chart, I just want to circle his north and south nodes. His north node up here is in Pisces, and his south nodes, I'll circle the planets that are conjunct as well, is in Virgo, in the 5th house. His north node's in the 11th house. So, where he's coming from is Virgo in the south node in the 5th house, and he's moving towards Pisces. So let's first look at the sign and house. So Virgo south node, you know, he was a genius in math and sciences and analyzing things, but his Pisces north node made him more into philosophical and esoteric and spiritual interests that kind of propelled him forward. So he is a scientist, but also a poet and you know, a visionary as well. So he went from the 5th house to the 11th house. So the 11th house has to do with the community at large versus his own, just his own, well, children. 5th house rules children, whereas 11th house rules friends. Not that he would ignore his children or anything, but just that his focus is more on the world at large. You know, that became his movement in his life, and less about his own self-expression, his own, you know, that sort of thing. So let's see here. So now let's look at his conjuncts. And, you know, he has the lunar conjunct in the north node and the Venus conjunct in the south node. So Venus conjunct the south node Venus is about relationships, and pleasure, aesthetics, beauty, artistic type of stuff. And the moon is about emotions, security, uh, how you regenerate, and being a moon in Pisces means that he's very sensitive to and intuitive, and particularly to dreams and visions and that sort of thing. The Venus describes his relationships, women he was attracted to, and so that being in the South Node, it's kind of a loose conjunct. It's 5 degrees, whereas so that's about a 9-degree conjunction, but still influential. Venus here rules the first, or I have it here. It rules the 6th and 12th. It doesn't rule the 12th. It rules the ascendant because of Taurus. Venus rules Taurus. So his ascendant is ruled by Venus, which means that his South Node is conjunct himself. Is conjunct his chart ruler, which has to do with himself, and so maybe he was transcending that in a sense. And then it also rules the 6th house. The 6th house cusp is in Libra, so Venus rules the 6th house as well. So that kind of shows how he's, there's a focus on Taurus, which is wealth and possessions, and Libra, which is relationships, that those are important for him. But when he moves towards his North Node, it has to do with the moon, that is a tighter conjunction with the North Node, and rules Cancer. So that is the 3rd house ruler, which has to do with communications. So he needed to write books and that sort of thing that expressed his feelings about the world. And that's what made him a great visionary. So you can kind of see the direction of his life with these, with his South and North Node, and also see how, Venus has to do with who he was as a scientist, as someone who's analytical, and Moon has to do with him, his emotions and his feelings of wanting a greater vision, a more spiritual, otherworldly view on life, which made him the great visionary that he was. Anyways, what do we take away from this? We're answering the question, where are you going? And basically the lunar north and south nodes, the south node is your source address and your destination address is your north node. So the mindset that you're evolving from, your starting point when you were born into this life and when you leave this life, these are the lessons you're developing. And so the nodes are like a locomotive when it comes to, the conjuncts. They either slow down your development, put on the brakes, or add fire to it. The north node conjuncts is going to add fire to the locomotive, make it accelerate towards your destination. The brakes are going to slow down your development to get to your destination. And so this just came to me. If any of you are into near-death experiences, you go, according to the near-death common experiences, that you leave your body. When you die, you leave your body, you go through a tunnel, and then you go through some sort of life review, reviewing all the moments of your life. And maybe at that time, it's kind of slanted towards your north node, the things you're supposed to learn, and not everybody learns those lessons, or maybe we get sidetracked, or we get, we regress back into our south node, and maybe maybe that's what we're reviewing when we get all those images flashing in front of us that showed whether we made those connections with people. Did we evolve? Did we grow as a person? Did we form more intimate relationships? All of those things. So that just kind of came to me, you know. So there's lots of analogies. You know, I use locomotive, package addresses. You know, for the sake of looking at charts, I like the package address because, you know, we want a simple place, starting point of where we're starting from and where we're going to. And the North Node just fits that really nicely. So, you know, they basically answer, where are you going? In the next video, we're going to discuss the hardest and softest aspects in our chart that talk about how are you going to get there. So that's navigating the terrain. You know, we were talking about the North and South Node here, which are the, you know, the big picture. You're starting here and you're ending here. But now we're going to say, well, what's all the terrain in between that's going to help you get there? And that's what we're going to address in the next video, and that I'm very excited to bring to you. Thank you very much.